It is such a big problem. People don't realize it. You know, when they throw their debris over their fences or contractor puts, trash in the canal. I remember back in it was in the 90s, Dan Kaluta was in charge of the Lake Borgne Basin Levee District, and he was really frustrated. We were all frustrated because there was a real heavy rain event, had some significant flooding, and everybody was complaining, and a lot of it was attributable to the fact that there was just so much trash in the canals coming up on the rakes that you just couldn't keep up. And so, to make a point, he came along and must have put about 20 truckloads of all the material that was collected at a couple of the pump stations on the neutral ground in front of the government complex, and that caused quite a stir, as I recall, back in those days.
Just dealing with some of the citizens' concerns and complaints. I know, Louis, you hear about those all of the time. What kind of stuff are you hearing from the citizens?
Well, during a heavy rain event, we'll get phone calls and they'll blow the phones up with the street flooding. And we can handle about a 3-inch rain in the first hour.
Right.
And then after that, we don't get a break with that rain. Once the canals, once the drainage fills up, the water has to gravity flow to get to the pump station before the pump stations can pump it out. So once that water gets to the pump stations and they start pumping it out, if we continue with an inch and a half, 2 inches an hour after the first hour, well, then we're in trouble. We're going to have some street flooding. It's going to take us a little time to catch up with the system. But knock on wood, it's very seldom that we'll get water in homes. Very seldom.
Well, one of the things while I was on the levee board, I was able to go to the Netherlands, and in the Netherlands, for a different reason, they try to keep as much water inside of the system. And the reason they do is because most of their ground is made of organic material, and by leaving it hydrated, it does not compact nearly like it would if it was pulled out of the system. So I see that as one of the benefits of our system. A lot of people don't like to see open canals. However, it serves a useful purpose, not only to keep the organic material from deteriorating too quickly, but also to get the water drained off more quickly, rather than, like you were describing, just a small hole in the ground, which would serve a bunch of houses. Can you give us an example of what you were talking about?
Yeah, it's like, when St. Bernard was first developing, you had everybody live close to the river. So you had from the river to St. Bernard Highway, and then they developed from St. Bernard Highway to Judge Perez, and then from Judge Perez they went to Patricia Street, and now they're from Patricia Street, they're all the way to the 40 Auburn Canal, Florida Avenue. And then majority of these subdivisions, they cover in all of the main drainage canals. Well, at that time, during them days, they put drainage under the streets, and so now you have this water that has to start from a pipe on the river, and the closer you are to the river, the smaller pipes you can have to put in. The further back you get north, that water, it's more volume going that way, so you might have to have a 6-foot pipe under your streets up this way. And we'll start getting complaints, people will call with the water coming in, and then sometimes when you get to the resident, it might be that garbage can on top of the drain, blocking the water from going in. It could be from the grass cutters that blow the grass in the drains on top of the drains. During the fall months, the biggest problem is the leaves that fall off the trees during the fall months, and them leaves will get in the street. I mean, it's nothing they can do to control that, but it's a great help when the residents will go out and say, well, we're going to rake these leaves and we're going to clean these leaves up off the street before the rain event comes.
Yeah.
We're going to bring our garbage cans inside before this heavy wind comes and blows them down the street. They stuck on top of a drain.
Everybody can do something.
All the residents can lend a helping hand, and we do have a lot of the residents in St. Bernard Parish that really helps us out. They'll go out there and do the best they can possibly do. Big help. If you get a contractor that's going to put you a new fence up, whatever, and you have a redwood fence, make sure that contractor takes the debris and hauls it off. We have 2 transfer stations that the residents can use free. Contractors that has to go to and pay to go dump. But some of these guys will go in and they're not contractors. They just guys doing side work. And they'll take down the fence and throw it in a drainage canal behind the house. Well, that fence board winds up at the pump stations. And that pump operator doesn't only have to maintain them pumps and run them engines. His job is to run what we call trash rakes. So
How does a trash rake work?
The trash work, what it does, when all the debris that's floating in the canal or that's getting sucked into the pump, there's a set of rakes that are in front of that pump that
And we're
doesn't.
talking big rakes.
We talking about huge rakes, okay?
Right.
And what happens is running on a chain, and it has paddles on it. So when all of that trash gets up against the grating, it doesn't allow the water to get through the grating to get to the pump out. So then you have to hit the button, and these trash rakes have big, huge paddles. And the paddles come up, and it brings all the debris to the top, and it dumps it on the bridge. And then the next paddle catches the rest of it, dumps it. Then that pump operator has to get on the skid steer and push all of that debris out the way.
Skid steer is a piece of heavy equipment
It's
that
a
he's got to
bobcat,
push.
yes.
It's a bobcat. He's got to
It's a
push
bobcat. That's
yeah.
correct. And then, he's fighting the snakes, he's fighting the alligators, he's fighting the heavy rain, the heavy winds, and he still has to monitor them pumps upstairs.
Yeah, because you can't run those pumps if, like you said, if they're cavitating, if they're sucking air as opposed to water.
Exactly. I mean, if you get a lot of debris up against them rakes, you have to turn them pumps way down. So you're not pumping full capacity that you can be pumping because of the amount of debris that's, even loose vegetation that goes in the canal.
Yeah.
It does slow down the process of us dewatering the streets when we have that problem. And you have to remember now, on the west side, we only have 6 stations. So on the east side, we only have 2 stations.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the stations on the east side doesn't have a set of trash rakes. You have to bring a piece of heavy equipment in and take the trash out of the canal with a piece of equipment because there is no trash rakes on that one. We have a couple of them on the west side that we have the gratings, the trash gratings, but there's no rakes, no paddles to pull the debris out of the canals. You have to bring heavy equipment in to do that.
Well, long ago, I learned that one of the ways that you handle that is you turn on the pumps, or this is my understanding, that you turn on the pumps that have the trash rakes to try to get all of the trash to the ones with the rakes first, pull that out, and then turn on the other ones.
Absolutely.
I mean, is that a way that you all dealt with it?
Yeah, I mean, that's one way. The other way is, we would abruptly stop one of the pumps and backwash material away from the screen, and then that gives you a new start. But eventually, it's going to clog up again, and that is it is such a big problem. People don't realize it. When they throw their debris over their fences, or contractor puts trash in the canal. And I remember back in I think it was in the 90s, Dan Kaluta was in charge of the Lake Borgne Basin Levee District, and he was really frustrated. We were all frustrated because there was a real heavy rain event, had some significant flooding, and everybody was complaining, and a lot of it was attributable to the fact that there was just so much trash in the canals coming up on the rakes that you just couldn't keep up. And so, to make a point, he came along and must have put about 20 truckloads of all the material that was collected at a couple of the pump stations on the neutral ground in front of the government complex, and that caused quite a stir, as I recall, back in those days. But it certainly made the point that this is the kind of stuff that comes up at these doggone pump stations, and after that, my recollection was for several years, people kind of took notice. So. It's just a matter of awareness that, those things that go over your fence or get put into the canal and other places, eventually that pump operator's got to take them out when it comes to the pump stations.
Yeah, so we all have a part to play. I mean, if your debris is stopping my drain up, I'm not going to be real happy about that. So,
and all of this is, on these drainage canals, there's preventive maintenance on these canals on we don't wait for a rain event to start cleaning canals. It's all year long that there's a team from the Southeast Flood Authority that's cleaning up canals. The parish government, we're cleaning up canals, and we have about a little over 120 miles of open drainage canal that runs throughout our parish, and the Southeast Flood Authority maintains about 60 miles of that, correct? And we do around 60 miles, but in St. Bernard Parish government, we also have a little over 200 miles of the drainage under the streets that we have to maintain. And, it's a lot of work on maintaining the 200 miles of drainage under the streets and the 60 miles of drainage canals.
Yeah, not to mention the mechanical nature of pumps in general and all of the maintenance and repair that is required to keep those things operational, which is a heck of a job.
It is. And some of the big stations, like 1 and 6, I mean, them guys have them pumps up and running they probably burning around 55 to 60 gallons of diesel per hour. I mean,
Oh, yeah, at
we're
least.
not talking about small engines here. We're
Right.
talking about engines that'll eat up some fuel. Our fuel tanks back there, 10,000 gallons on our fuel tanks, and
Well, once again, when I first got on the flood authority, I asked to take a tour of those pump stations, and Bob showed me around and where they stayed for Hurricane Katrina, and how all of the tin was peeling off of the roofs while the pump operators were there. It was a little different in St. Bernard than it was in Jefferson Parish, and our pump operators were here doing what they needed to do in a lot of danger themselves. So they did a heroic job, although it was all for naught because of the failure of the Mr. Go levees. But anyway, it was
Yeah, but I will
pretty
say
impressive.
this though. I mean, we had a core group of people. It was around 20 or so people that stayed in the parish and worked the pump stations, and also helped at some of the last minute shelters that popped up. Just kind of managing those shelters. And although the parish flooded, we were somewhat creative. We were able to get parts from some of the auto parts stores back at those times, because those were wide open at the time after they flooded, and we got the pumps actually running within a day or two of the storm passing, and a lot of times we were pumping. We began pumping the parish out about 3 days after the storm. Now, in some areas, it was a little bit longer because the water had come over the back levee and breached it, and we had to wait till the water came down low enough to where we could pump without having it come right back. But certainly during those times, I think it took about 12 to 13 days to pump the parish out.
And I cut that levee back on Parish Road
Yeah.
behind Demlins. I cut
To
that
let
levee.
That's right,
out,
yeah.
Let that water out of there. Yeah. Absolutely. And then I went back on the ship channel, and we tracked back on the ship channel and made a little cut. I'm sorry, that was on that was the east side of the 40 Alpin levee.
That's
We cut
correct.
the east side of the 40 up.
That's back in the back there where it makes that turn. That's right. I
Yes,
remember
we made
that.
a few cuts in there.
And again, that's another good example of how the agencies worked together back in those days, and even till today. I mean, whenever there's an emergency or a crisis or a hurricane event or something like that, I mean, everybody gets together and pitches in, and whatever's required. I mean, that's what we do. That's what we did then, and that's what's done now.
Thank you for joining this episode of the Pulse of the Parish podcast. The audio recording is available on all major podcasting platforms. Links are available below. For more of our video recordings, the most recent upload is available here, or a video YouTube thinks you'll like is available here. We'll see you next time.